As feared, the administration announcing today the president will not veto a bill that allows American citizens to be indefinitely detained without trial on American soil if there is even a suspicion they might have ties to terrorists. In our third story tonight, the defense authorization bill passing the House early in the evening after the White House abandoned its threat to veto the legislation over provisions on terror suspects. $662 billion bill which authorizes money for military personnel, weapons systems, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and follow-ups. The president had previously vowed to veto it if it included the indefinite detention clause. Today, however, the White House Press Secretary Jay Carney announcing that with the last-minute changes, after intensive engagement by the administration and the president himself, the president would not veto it. Mr. Carney saying in a statement today, quote, "We have concluded that the language does not challenge nor constrain the president's ability to collect intelligence, incapacitate dangerous terrorists, and protect the American people, and the president's senior advisors will not recommend a veto." Representative Gerald Nadler of New York, who will join us presently, taking to the House floor today to express outrage at what he says is the latest example of a decade-long assault on civil liberties.
In the last 10 years, we have begun to let go of our freedoms, bit by bit, with each new executive order, court decision, and, yes, act of Congress. The changes in this bill to the laws of detention have major implications for our fundamental rights. Whoever it reaches, the government would have the authority to lock them up without trial until, quote, the end of hostilities, unquote, which, given how broadly the AUMF has been used to justify actions far from Afghanistan, might mean forever.
Civil liberties groups also condemning the administration today. Human Rights First President and CEO Elisa Massimino saying in a statement, the American people need a leader whose commitment to smart national security policies will not wane in the face of opposition from Capitol Hill. This legislation will be a loaded gun in the hands of any future administration. The ACLU's Laura Murphy saying Mr. Obama, quote, should more carefully consider the consequences of allowing this bill to become law. Occupy Washington, D.C. protesters also staging a sit-in in the Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Carl Levin's office today to protest this bill. Joining me now is promised Congressman Gerald Nadler, the Democrat of New York. Thanks for your time tonight, sir.
It's a pleasure.
What on earth is the president doing on this?
Well, the president was talking about vetoing the bill, but only because he thought it limited his power. He was not talking about vetoing the bill because it gave the president the power to order the indefinite detention without trial of anybody, basically. And I think quite clearly does that. Now, some people on the floor said today that all it does is codify existing law, but that's not correct. What it does is to codify in law the claimed power claimed by Presidents Bush and Obama to put anybody, including American citizens, in jail forever, indefinitely, without any trial or due process whatsoever. That's quite a terrible blow to American liberty.
Is there a reason the House seemed to have reacted more strongly towards this when President Bush made overtures about it, as opposed to now, as President Obama has at least, in a passive-aggressive way, gotten involved in the same thing, or perhaps a worse version of the same thing?
Well, I don't know that we reacted more strongly, and this came up very rapidly in the House, frankly. It came up in an overall military authorization bill instead of in a bill by itself, which is, again, should not have happened. And it was part of what I said on the floor. We should have had hearings and debate on the bill itself and not simply as part of a massive bill that many people voted for other reasons. And as it was, the Democrats voted 93 in favor, 93 against, on the basis of a very short campaign against the bill that lasted about 2 days. So I think that was quite impressive, and there were 40-odd Republican no votes. And
the leadership in the Senate comes from people who have a firm grip on civil liberties in this country, or at least previously did, Senator Levin being foremost of them. Do you have any clue as to why this action is being taken with Democratic support, especially in this context?
There is really no good reason why we have to be doing this now, especially if the leadership of the Armed Services, the Democratic leadership of the Armed Services Committee, which led the debate for the bill, said that all they were doing is codifying existing law. They weren't making any changes. If you didn't like the existing law, well, that was a different question. But that's the existing law, and this wasn't changing it. If that is true, why was it necessary to put this in this bill now? The bill should have been separated out. Let the defense bill pass and on its own merits, and give this bill proper consideration. There was no particular reason to do it.
Well, all right.
Except to confirm the powers that some of us don't think any president should have.
Indeed. The House and the Senate going along with it, and the President obviously not vetoing it, barring some miracle in the interim. Is there a next step? Do you expect a peck of lawsuits, or what happens after this?
Well, there will be lawsuits only when they try to exercise this power.
Right.
Now, there have been two major cases in which the President Bush in those cases, claimed the power to arrest an American citizen on American soil and put him in a military proceeding and put him in jail indefinitely without any due process. The cases were going to the Supreme Court when the administration backed down and made the cases moot by putting them into a civilian prosecution because they thought they might lose in court, although a U.S. Court of Appeals ruled the wrong way in one of those cases. But the administration claims this power, as did the prior administration, and there have been no Supreme Court rulings on it, which makes it very, very dangerous.
All right, so it's the oldest, and all the irony is one of the key people in one of those key cases, the Hamdan case. Neil Cutshall wound up, one of the attorneys for Hamdan, wound up in...
Well, the Hamdan case said you have the right to habeas corpus, but the cases that were on the question of can you arrest an American on American soil, for that matter, and keep him in custody indefinitely simply because you say he's a terrorist, were the Almari and the Padilla cases. And those were never decided by, they never went to the Supreme Court.
All right, well, thank you for correcting me on that. The last point is, and it's the cliche of all questions, somebody sitting at home dropping their food, hearing about this restriction of civil liberties or this rollback of civil liberties, does what at this point?
Well, I would protest to the President, and for that matter to the leadership of the Congress. This is, frankly, these are powers that during the campaign 3 years ago, the President Obama, candidate Obama, said we shouldn't have. And on these questions, they have essentially taken the same positions as the Bush administration, and we Democrats should oppose this by our own party.
It's funny how presidents tend to think alike after a while. Representative Gerald Nadler of New York, thanks for your time, Congressman, and thanks for your work on this.
Thank you.